Gsluke, here for our round 1 prize picks targets for this week's Scottish Open. Going to be covering what to expect here for round 1 on Thursday. We're across the pond there in Scotland, so a bit of a different look and of course different playing style needed for this type of venue, and going to cover my top 3 props here for the first round. Now we're not going to do the usual 5. I'm changing things up a bit with the content here. While last week we had live streams for the content, going to be videos this time around, but just going to stick to the 3 props I'm giving. That's going to be the standard from here on out, as a majority of the props I'm taking are going to be posted on my Patreon page. So that's a change going forward to try and protect the picks. You know, a lot of the picks I give on here end up being bumped within maybe even an hour of the video coming out. So there'll still be 3 picks coming out, but the rest 7 to 10 that I'm playing on any given slate, sometimes more than that, in the 15 to 18 prop range, are all going to be posted on that end. So make sure to get on over there if you haven't already checked it out. Of course, you get the DFS picks that I do, the Discord server that I run, all of the other benefits that come with my Patreon, but just wanted to go ahead and set that straight to begin with. But we have a lot to talk about here. Again, the whole research side, and then our top props here for Thursday. So let's go ahead and hop right on in. Already on the screen, we've got Wind Finder, and just to take a look at the weather expected here for Thursday. So you can see in the forecast, relatively low winds expected. They're between 5 and 2 miles an hour for much of the day, but towards the afternoon wave, you can see it gets to that 10 mile an hour range by 7 p.m. And you can see the wind gusts by 4 p.m. are upwards of 9 to 17 miles an hour. Now this forecast is a little bit more subdued than the super forecast. As we go over that tab, you can see they're expecting a little bit more severe conditions, closer to 10 miles an hour for much of the morning, down to right around 7, right around 11. But in the afternoon wave, they're in that 14 to 20 mile an hour range when it comes to wind gusts. So depending on which forecast ends up being correct, which at this point here on a Tuesday night, we don't really know what's going to be the case, could see different conditions on the golf course. But one thing to note is that regardless of the wind conditions, this is an easy golf course. In 2019 and 2021, you saw winning scores well past 20 under par. In fact, 20 and 22 under par winning this event, which if you remember the John Deere Classic guys, you know, we had guys at 5.5 birdies for pretty much every single round. Winning score was just 21 under par there for JT Poston. So if you thought last week was fireworks, expect to see very similar things this time around. Now, the one huge X factor in Scotland is, of course, the wind. And for Thursday, right, even if it's the harsher of the 2 forecasts, I mean, you're talking about single digits for most of the day, right? You know, 12 to 14 miles an hour towards the later half of the afternoon. I would still expect scores to be right on line with what we saw the years before, if not slightly better. The field this year is a lot better than what we've seen in years past. You, of course, have the addition of the 75 PGA Tour players, but on top of that, a solid 10 of the top 20 in the official World Golf Rankings are teeing it up this time around. In fact, I believe last time around it was only 3 of the top 20. So clearly, expect scores to get better on that front, but also because the weather, especially if you look at just the normal forecast over here, looks relatively benign there on Thursday. So with all of that in mind, what are the props that I'm looking at? So we're going to add them one by one here. We'll start with the birdie or better category, where I'm going to be taking the over here on Justin Thomas at 5 birdies. He's somebody who has shown an ability to make birdies in bunches, and in fact, this year is #1 on the PGA Tour in average birdies per round. You could probably stop the argument right there, but on top of that, there are 3 gettable par 5s, and both of them, or I should say all 3 of them, are going to be reachable in 2 by Justin Thomas. You can't say the same for the rest of the field, so for the guys I'm looking to take an over on in this category, a lot of them tend to be the bombers, because on top of that, you have a drivable par 4, a few par 4s that are less than 400 yards, and having the ability to hit the fairway, get it out there 320, 330 yards, is going to leave you a flip wedge at the very most into those surfaces. So somebody I expect to have plenty of looks at birdie, and the real X factor for Justin Thomas is of course going to be the flat stick. If he can bring that putter to play, I have no doubts about him going out there and making 6 birdies and, of course, getting to 5 to at the very least push. That's the one key factor here with Justin Thomas, is he's not at 5.5 birdies. So even if the forecast is slightly more harsh than we expect, right, maybe the super forecast ends up being a little bit more accurate than what we saw for the regular forecast, he still has a very solid chance to push, if not hit the over. Like I said, a lot of easy holes around this venue, and we saw winning scores close to 20 under par, maybe even past that over the last few years. And of course, Justin Thomas, the best birdie maker in all of the world. So I like him there at 5 birdies, somebody that I'll be taking the over on. Next up, we've got an under that I'm taking, so that's actually going to be Collin Morikawa here. I'm taking the under at 5 birdies, and the real issue for Collin is going to be the birdie production. His flat stick, just like a Justin Thomas, is dealing with issues in that category. Of course, he hasn't been nearly as positive a JT of late. That's why JT was able to win major championships. He's been in contention multiple times over the last few months. But on top of that, Morikawa's ball striking hasn't been nearly as impressive over the last month or two as Justin Thomas. And historically, right, Morikawa, one of the best iron players we've had on the PGA Tour, he has been inconsistent at best over the last few weeks. And he notably came out to the media saying that he was dealing with issues with his ball flight. His very consistent left to right fade that he has played for his entire career has completely abandoned him. And in fact, at the US Open, you saw him playing a draw for the majority of the week. And while it didn't really affect him, he still had a top 10 finish. His ball striking stats were much lower than what we're used to seeing. The X factor was the putter. He went out there and was actually gaining strokes on the greens. While that does give me a little bit of optimism for him going forward, I'm not thrilled about the ball striking form that we've seen, and even more so, we'd expect that to regress, right? He obviously had a ceiling performance in that category. He's not the type of player that has taken that momentum and ridden with it in the past. It's a lot more of the flash in the pan sort of thing for Collin Morikawa, where he has those spike weeks from time to time. He'll go out there and impress us, and then the next week, maybe even for the next month or so, go back to that baseline performance of losing a bunch of strokes on the greens. So I'm not all that thrilled about Collin. I don't expect his putting to be there on the first round, and somebody who from the ball striking perspective hasn't been nearly as sharp as a Justin Thomas. And now finally, the last prop I'm looking at here is going to be a birdie or better matchup prop. And for this one, it's going to be the Jordan Spieth over on his birdie or better matchup. And this completely comes down to the matchup. Justin Rose, while he is an aggressive player, isn't nearly the birdie maker of a Jordan Spieth. Spieth, over his last 24 measured rounds, is one of the best players in the world with his shots gained tee to green, gaining close to 2/3 of a stroke per round in all 3 categories. On top of that, the putter has returned to earth. He was losing close to half a stroke per round with the flat stick for quite some time, but now over his last 24 rounds is a neutral. So it has completely flipped that, and based on the momentum that we've seen from him, I would expect that to creep into the green. And if he can go ahead and, make that better, right, amend those issues on the greens, continue to hit the ball like he has from tee to green, you're talking about somebody who could go out there and potentially even win this week. I absolutely love him regardless of the format you're going after, but particularly when he's matched up against Justin Rose, who's almost completely carried himself with the flat stick. Of late, almost all of his shots gained have come on the greens, and though he is gaining close to half a stroke per round with the putter, the ball striking, he's just a slight gainer off the tee over his last 24 rounds, and he's a loser off on approach and around the green, which might be surprising for Justin Rose. So somebody who I don't have all that much faith in, particularly when he's matched up against one of my favorite birdie makers in a Jordan Spieth. So that's the 3 props that I'm giving. Again, a lot more than I'm taking here, guys, but that's what we're going to stick to for the video. Obviously, got to protect some of the picks that I'm giving to my paid subscribers, but using that same type of logic, I'm sure you guys could probably identify a lot of other props on the board that you like. That's all I've got for the round 1 preview. Hopefully you guys got something out of the research process. Feel a little bit more comfortable to make your slips now, but before you hop on out of here, feel free to go ahead and let me know in the comments what your favorite prop on the board is. Whether it was something that I mentioned or completely off my radar, I always love to hear from you, so make sure you go ahead and do so. And also, make sure you smash the like button before you hop out of here too. It lets me know that you're enjoying this content, enjoy the format, want to see even more in the future, so make sure you do that, and it also helps me grow the channel. Gets the content out there to more people, so a win-win, obviously something that would mean a lot to me here as well. So I appreciate that, appreciate all the support here, guys. Hopefully we can see some green here for Thursday. Best of luck with those slips, and I'll catch you guys next time for our preview for round 2.